Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Gopi Dana Vallabha Girivaradhare Jaya Gopi Dana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Ravana Chahade Yamuna Ravana Chahade Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Privrajaka Charista Dushata Shishi Mantra Goswami Bhai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurindaritam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupakaram Hayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhavacha Patitanam Pavanepyo Vaishnavepyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Brahma Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Nama Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. So welcome everybody to the Sunday Feast program in New Dwaraka Dham. And so today we're going to discuss a topic which hopefully should be very interesting for everybody, dedicated to the 50th anniversary of ISKCON. And in that light we'll be looking at the history of not only our organization but our tradition, which goes back into more than 5 centuries. What was happening 530 years back. Of course, we understand that the Bhakti tradition or Krishna consciousness is eternal, but there have been a lot of interesting ways to introduce Krishna consciousness to the population, which was started by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, as we know, is the manifestation of Krishna himself in the role of his devotee. And so our tonight's presentation is novel ways to present Krishna consciousness, and it is, next slide, connected to the very first purpose of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. So we can see that the very first purpose of our society is very broad. And we'll be reading a couple of scriptural references from Srila Prabhupada's books. And the first one will be from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 16, translation and part of the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So I'll just read translation. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated due to material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. And towards the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that expert devotees can find out competent means to inject Krishna consciousness into the dull brains of the materialistic population. Of course, this is kind of strong language, but we can understand that Srila Prabhupada was actually telling everything as it is, even though it may not sound so palatable to everybody, but it's a fact that unfortunately there are so many people in this day and age who are degrading themselves so much by taking intoxications, drugs and drinks and watching TV hours on end, and naturally that it makes them very dull. And so it takes a lot of expertise to try to introduce spiritual knowledge and spiritual values to such people. Such transcendental activities of the devotees for the service of the Lord can bring a new order of life to the foolish society of materialistic men. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his subsequent followers exhibited expert dexterity in this connection. By following the same method, one can bring the materialistic man of this age of quarrel into order for peaceful life and transcendental realization. So we can understand that Srila Prabhupada is encouraging us to try to do everything in our power to introduce the essence of spiritual life to as many people as we can, and actually create order for peaceful life and transcendental realization, which is very much similar to the first purpose of ISKCON. And so we'll be looking at how it was done from the very beginning. So next. This is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in his youth he was known as Nimai Pandit, and already at that time he exhibited a lot of creativity, we can say, in introducing Krishna and his holy names to the people. For example, he made his own textbook on Sanskrit grammar, and all the rules were explained on the basis of the holy names of Krishna. So all the students were chanting the holy names of the Lord while learning grammar. So that's a very interesting example of Lord Chaitanya's creativity in introducing Krishna consciousness in new ways. Okay, next. And another very interesting example from the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he took sannyas, but interestingly enough, it was not Vaishnava sannyas, it was Mayavadi sannyas. He took sannyas from Mayavadi Sampradaya for the single reason to have prominent position to influence the top of the society at that time. And because Mayavadi Shankara Sampradaya was the most influential Sampradaya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took initiation in that Sampradaya to be able to present Krishna consciousness in a very influential and powerful way. Next. And so, very interesting example how he preached. Sometimes we think that preaching means talking, but here Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibits, shows very interesting example that you can preach by keeping completely quiet. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened to the guru of all the Mayavadis, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, straight for 7 days in a row. Listened to his explanations of Vedanta Sutra without saying a word, without asking a single question. And he waited patiently until Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya himself asked him, "You're not saying anything, you're not asking any questions, do you understand something?" And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "I understand everything, what Vedanta Sutra says, but your explanations are confusing and disturbing." And so then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya started inquiring from Lord Chaitanya, why is that? And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had an opportunity to give Vaishnava version of Vedanta Sutra, explaining what Vedanta Sutra really is and what is the purpose of it. And so, just by his patience and patient listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he managed to convert him into Krishna consciousness, and by converting one influential person, what's happening? You influence all his followers, and this is what happened in this case. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really knew what he was doing. And this is a very good example for us. Actually, we know that Srila Prabhupada, from the very beginning, he was very much interested to give Krishna consciousness to the topmost levels of human society, because, as we know, if we have leaders practicing Krishna consciousness, then all the followers, they will automatically practice. And so we still have to achieve that goal, because there are not so many leaders presently who are even aware of Krishna consciousness, what to speak of practicing it. And so next slide is depicting also a very interesting example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is, of course, being the Supreme Lord, all cognizant and has full knowledge, and is capable of explaining Krishna consciousness in the best possible way. But here he took the position of a listener, and he was asking Ramananda Rai, who was the governor of Madras at that time, to explain to him the deepest levels of Krishna consciousness. So this is a very interesting example. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes preached or distributed Krishna consciousness by carefully listening and by placing relevant inquiries. And so now moving to the founder Acharya of our society, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. When Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world, when he came to America, his early disciples picked up on his mood, and they were trying to decide what kind of means they can adopt to present Krishna consciousness to the maximum number of people. And because rock music was so popular at the time, they agreed to organize a concert, rock concert, and Srila Prabhupada was meant to preach at that rock concert, which was really amazing. I mean, you know, taking into consideration that Srila Prabhupada comes from very aristocratic Bengali Vaishnava family, and as he himself says, never committing a single sinful activity in his life, right? Leading such a pure lifestyle from his very birth, and not being exposed to, you know, rock and roll and all kind of other things. And then he agreed to go to that concert to speak about Krishna consciousness, and one devotee joked, probably this is why Srila Prabhupada's holding his head. Where am I going? But he did that. And by introducing Krishna consciousness from the stage, which was shared by the most influential rock groups at the time, that helped to promote Krishna consciousness far and wide. And as we know from the history of ISKCON, it was due to the input from all these famous people that Krishna consciousness was spread so fast that it's referred to as a Hare Krishna explosion in one book, and so written by devotee, and so this is a very interesting example. Next. And Srila Prabhupada explored all possible opportunities to present Krishna consciousness on the TV. Next. He was speaking on the radio shows. Next slide. Next one. And he was following the mood of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who also exhibited a lot of creativity in establishing Krishna consciousness on very solid grounds. Here we can see a locomotive train, and we may wonder what does it have to do in common with Krishna consciousness. Next slide. So here we see the leaders of our society, governing commission of our society, gathering together in Sridham Mayapur. And so for short, this body is called Governing Body Commission. Next. And the concept of the Governing Body Commission was taken from Indian Railways. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati conceived an idea that Vaishnavas can manage their organization in the same way, in the same fashion as the railroads are managed in the country. And we have the same system in ISKCON, that our society is governed not by a single personality, but by a collective group of senior leaders which form the Governing Body Commission. Next. And by connecting with influential people, Srila Prabhupada was guiding them personally in spreading Krishna consciousness, and this is the most influential person at that time who took up seriously the practices of Krishna consciousness, and this is a member of the Beatles, George Harrison, and as we know, he did a lot for the movement, not only in terms of supporting the movement financially, but writing songs and directly preaching Krishna consciousness to the millions of his followers. And Srila Prabhupada was encouraging him to focus on that rather than giving up so-called material activity, which was rock and roll music, and renouncing it all for the sake of personal practices Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada actually encouraged him to stay on, to stay in his position and continue preaching, utilizing his fame for Krishna. Next. And we know that Srila Prabhupada was not shy himself by he was using the modern luxuries, that he's riding on this stretched limousine. This is one of those stretched limousines, and Srila Prabhupada's looking at his watch, which could be Rolex watch. He had a Rolex watch given to him. And so we may wonder, sannyasi, renounced man, how come that he was using such luxurious cars and such expensive watches, etc. But Srila Prabhupada did that not for his own sake. He did it because he wanted to impress other people that everything can be used for Krishna. He was telling about his position that I could easily, that people judge by externals, how person's dressed, what person's using, what kind of car person's riding. And so if someone's dressed very poorly and walking instead of driving, so it's very unlikely that someone will take that person very seriously. But Srila Prabhupada exhibited a lot of opulence just to impress upon people that Krishna consciousness is real, that he has this prominent position, and therefore others were taking him seriously. But he never needed these things for himself. And the proof of it is that his lifestyle never changed. He was living the same simple lifestyle he was living in India when he had nothing. And he was saying, I was happy to chant Hare Krishna sitting under the tree, but how many people would come and join me under the tree? But if we have opulent temples, then many people will show interest towards Krishna consciousness. And so his disciples are following in his mood, and they introducing Krishna consciousness to many, many prominent leaders in the society. Srila Radhanath Maharaj addressing British Parliament, explaining to them the essence of Krishna consciousness, which is wonderful achievement. Next, he's befriending Barack Obama to such an extent that they exchanged personal numbers, and Barack Obama would call Maharaj on his number and would tell him, we've met in the White House, but I want to invite you to my own residence, and so please come. And that actually happened during one of the GBC meetings, and Maharaj had to excuse himself. He said, I cannot ignore this call because this call is from Barack Obama, so I'll have to take it and talk to him. And so he is doing a lot of preaching and connecting with different prominent faith leaders, leaders of different prominent spiritual organizations. As we can see, he is lighting the peace lamp, I assume, together with Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, Ramdev Baba, and I believe behind him is Iyengar, and many other prominent leaders. So he's exchanging greetings with Iyengar. Next. And befriending present Dalai Lama, 14th. And he was also associated with Mother Teresa. He makes friends amongst very popular actors and other artists like Russell Brand, famous stand-up comedian, and explaining Krishna consciousness on the TV. This is part of the Russian TV show. He talks about his personal experiences. And that's, by the way, very, very powerful position to speak from, that if you just talk philosophy, people might argue, but if you talk on the basis of your personal experience, no one can argue. Because it's you, it's not just theoretical. It's something you went through, and we're very fortunate because Krishna consciousness is giving us very unique personal experience of relationship with the Supreme Lord. How many of you realize that in your own life? Okay, so nice. And so, late Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he was also very creative and very innovative in his preaching approach, and of course they've been very close friends with Radhanath Swami, and actually we owe to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj because he encouraged Radhanath Maharaj to write his biography, The Journey Home. How many of you read this book? Yeah, so without the encouragement of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, that book would never been written and published, because Radhanath Maharaj, being humble Vaishnava, he didn't want to write about himself and promote himself, so to say. But Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, being on his deathbed, pushed him so much that he made him give a promise to the dying man that he will write and publish this book. And so this is the reason why Radhanath Maharaj wrote this book. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, while being sannyasi, he accepted position of a king, because one of his followers, he was one of the kings in Africa, and he wanted to become his disciple, but according to their tradition, you cannot become subordinate to anyone who is not a king. So, and he gave part of his kingdom to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj just to have an opportunity to be his disciple, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj agreed. And so he became a real king in Africa. And another very nice example of creativity, which actually, or noble ways to introduce Krishna consciousness, is of course Food for Life programs, which is serving the needy people vegetarian meals, but these meals are consisting of Krishna Prasad, spiritual food, food offered to Krishna. And not only it helps people to mitigate their hunger, but it actually changes their consciousness, because I've spoken to a number of leaders who run these programs, and they say the same thing, that initially when, these people, like homeless people, they come to take prasad, they have very low level of consciousness, and so their self-esteem is so low that they don't even look at people's eyes, and because they take so much drug and drinks, etc. But after some time, after taking prasadam, they start looking up, and they even start smiling, and then they express an interest to help with the program, to help with food distribution, prasadam distribution. And many of them, after taking prasadam for some time, they give up bad habits, and they take up normal job, and they completely change their lives. And some of them even take up seriously spiritual practices. So we can understand that because prasadam is spiritual food, it changes people's consciousness. And so prasadam, as Prabhupada was saying, is our secret weapon, because just by taking prasadam, people's lives can be completely transformed for better. And this is very interesting phenomena, what's happening when there is an exposure to Vedic culture and Krishna consciousness in the United Kingdom. There are certain schools which include studying Sanskrit into their curriculum. I'm not sure if we get the sound on this one. This is video clip. We can start it and see if we can get the sound. That this soundtrack is at the bottom, yeah.
Yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasya na kaschet kartum arhati.
Those who know Bhagavad Gita would recognize that the last part was recitation of Bhagavad Gita. And so this is public school. And so many students, they learn Sanskrit, and they learn Bhagavad Gita, they learn Upanishads, they learn different Bhakti scriptures, and they say that it actually inspires them spiritually. They like chanting these verses. So this is what's happening, because as we know, United Kingdom has been associated with India for quite some time, and they got influenced. This is what's happening when someone gets exposed to Vedic culture and devotee association. And another great advantage in the country is these are Krishna Avanti. These are government-funded public schools, and the curriculum of those schools is based entirely on Krishna consciousness, and we have devotee teachers teaching children, and government is paying all the expenses, including building of the schools, and all the food everyone takes is prasadam, and they have deities at each school, can be seen next. And so if someone is not recognizing, that's Her Majesty, Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, and she came to the Avanti schools. Next slide. And what devotees did, they placed the chair for her and her husband in front of the Krishna Balaram deities, and children on both sides, no previous one, greeted her, and so she had full darshan of the deities, prasadam of course also, and at the end, the bottom slide shows how temple president of the UK headquarters, Shruti Dharma Prabhu, gives her a picture of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passing through the forest of Jharikanda as a gift, and explains that the main principle the school is based upon is one of the verses spoken by the founder